What's going on YouTube? Today we're going to be doing a wheel bearing and a CV axle on Matt's 4Runner. Let's take a look. Alright, so first we're going to be starting with removing the wheel. We're going to just be using a front subframe right in the middle there to be jacking it up. And looking at that wheel space and they're like, oh, that's probably the reason why they're doing the wheel bearing today, but no, that's not going to be the reason why. This vehicle does have 340k on it, so I think that's a little bit more likely to be the culprit. Okay, so the reason why we are doing this wheel bearing today, it's making kind of
makes a loud noise.
A loud noise.
You can usually hear which side of the car it's coming from. I don't know. Sometimes it sounds like a helicopter.
Yeah.
You know, like woo 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 woo.
Sounds like there's a helicopter somewhere on the front of your car or like rear of your car, and it has high mileage, or you've been running some big spacers for an extended period of time. Could be likely that your wheel bearings need to be replaced. So that's a spacer. What is this? An inch thick on that?
Inch and a quarter.
It's a pretty good size spacer. We need some on the Skyline. Those are not so hella flush. You might have a little bit different looking brakes, and if you're doing this on a different year vehicle, it should be pretty close to the same, slight variations kind of thing. But yeah, this process should work on most years, I would say. Most vehicles, it should be the same procedure.
So on this has got a hard line coming off of the calipers on this particular truck. So there's a second clip. Usually you only find the one up here, and there's a soft hose going right to the caliper. This one's got a hard line, so we're gonna have to remove this brake line clip from here.
So yeah, just got a flathead screwdriver. You gotta just kind of jimmy it out. Some needle nose pliers could also do the trick there. Please note, everybody, when you are doing this or any kind of brakes on your Toyota, this hard line right here on higher mileage vehicles or stuff that's kind of, I don't know, it's just kind of a poor design. Water sometimes gets on the bottom of the hose there, like it just pools at the bottom and it starts to rust, which these ones have just been replaced. Like you just did the brakes on this one, right? Yeah. But yeah, you got to be real gentle with it, and sometimes you might have to replace it when you do this too, because it'll rot there, and you'll start pulling on it, and it'll break right, it'll snap right off. So you guys might want to order a set of those too when you're doing this or any kind of brake work. Okay, so on the very top there's a 10 mil bolt that you'll need to be removing. Just holds the bracket for the brake line in. So one bolt there, and then break that loose, and then your brakes. So now we're going to be removing the dust cover, and the way to do that is to either get a pry bar set. It's probably the easier way to do it, or if you don't have pry bars, just simply use a flathead screwdriver. And you want to just try to get it into the groove there without destroying this.
Slowly work your way around, that's key.
Yeah, patience is the key on this one. And yeah, just keep twisting it around and around and slowly trying to pry it off there. You want to try to do it without damaging it, so you don't have to buy new dust covers. There you go. Now get a pair of bullnose pliers. Probably use needle nose if you want as well, and just bend that clip just like so, because then you'll be able to pull it through. Okay, so just need a little extra wiggling, and gotta make sure to squeeze it really tight there, because even if it's just a little bit loose, then it doesn't want to pull out. Okay, so pro tip of the day, make sure you do have the proper tools before you start a project. You're gonna be using a 1 3/8 socket on there, which is huge. Probably just have to buy it separately because those do not come in socket sets. So I'm gonna try, see if I can break this loose here. All right, and you want to be holding, you want to make sure that somebody's holding the brakes too, otherwise it's just gonna, you're not gonna get it off. Yeah. Yep. So just simply remove that once you have it cracked. And next we'll be moving on to the caliper. Very important that you do this step before you do the caliper. And the reason being that you need to have that on there still is because you do need somebody to step on the brakes so you're able to break that loose, otherwise this will just spin freely. Caliper is coming off the hub now. So highly suggest a good breaker bar or a snipe, because they're a little tough to get off. Okay, so behind the caliper here, there's going to be 2 bolts, one at the top. And do you take the one at the bottom there?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you have only 2 people doing this and one of the people are kind of lazy or trying to film and can't really hold this, jack stand, kind of balance it there, and then use a bungee cord wrapped around through the inside and attach it right to the spring. It seems to hold it pretty good. So what you should have is something that looks like that now. Next we're going to be removing the hub bolt with 17 mil. Slap it on there.
4 of them.
Yeah. 2 at the top, behind there, just like that. And then 2 at the bottom. Once you have these bolts on the side removed, all 4 of them, all you're going to do is just start prying it off. Pry bar or screwdriver. Next, we're just going to use a mallet. Make sure it is rubber if you're keeping your...
Wood works better.
Yeah, wood works as well if you're keeping your axle. We are going to be replacing it, so it doesn't matter, but this is how you would do it the proper way.
That should do it.
Okay, so you might have to just undo these back bolts a little bit more once you get that center one pushed in with the hammer or mallet. And then once you do, it should come right off, just like that. This is the old one, which is greasy. And then this is what we have for the new one. You're gonna wanna make sure to clean all the shavings and everything out from the inside before you install the new one. And this you do not want to let rest how it's resting right now. Right now we're kind of just have it being held by its own weight there, but you want to make sure not to rest it like that, because there is an oil seal in the back that you do not want to damage. But like I said, we are going to be going one step further with this and replacing the CB axle as well, so we're not too worried about that getting damaged. So we removed this skid plate from the bottom of the 4Runner here. And what they recommend replacing the differential fluid when doing...
Well, draining it, because it's going to spill regardless. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to see how much comes out, and if a lot comes out, then I'll drain it. If just a little bit comes out, I'll, I don't know, top it back up after. Okay, so now we got to get the CV axle out. And to do that, what you want to be able to do is move this, this arm right out of the way. So first step to doing that is to getting the sway bar detached. It's just the one nut holding that end link on there. So you pull that off. I've already loosened it. It's going to come off easily. And then the sway bar is disconnected. Next ones will be the 2 bolts at the bottom here holding the ball joint arm. You're going to want to support this control arm before taking off those bolts, otherwise it will just drop.
Ooh. So that's what you're going to want to do, and just jack it up just a smidge. I'm going to use the impact gun for this one, because these bolts can be a bitch. All we did is just jimmy this over here and let that slide right out. So this is how you know your CV axle is broken. It slides in and out.
And the boot is clearly torn.
Alright, so I'm under the vehicle here, and this is right here is going to be the piece that needs to slide right out. So there's a little notch in it right there. You want to get your screwdriver in there and just hammer on it to slide it out that way. And yeah, it's kind of how you do it. What's the proper tool that you should be using if you have one?
Slide hammer.
A slide hammer. Yeah, screwdriver and hammer and a little bit of elbow grease will break that loose. I feel some busted knuckles happening pretty soon here. Make sure you're putting it in the right way, hey?
Yeah. Don't put it in backwards.
All right, so getting it back in here, you want to make sure basically the same way you pull it out. It's got the splines on the end, so you gotta feel when it's in. I don't know how else to explain. You gotta kind of feel how it's in when it's in the splines, and make sure they're lined up. But when you do, all you're gonna do is take a rubber mallet, and you want to do it without bending this assembly here. Like keep this and that as straight as possible. Basically, you're just gonna hammer it right in and right at it. And that's how you put that back in. It does take a little bit of force, so you'll have to give it a good couple hammers back in, as we kind of missed filming that. But
make sure it's clean. Don't want any dirt in there scoring up the machined area once you're pressing the new bearing back in. You don't want it to be dry though. If you do remove all the grease entirely, it's good to have a little layer of it on there. It'll make putting the new bearing in a lot easier too.
New wheel bearing should come with a new seal on it right there too. So probably recommend doing that as well. This one does look like it almost got kind of pinched a little bit in shipping. So we're hoping that's going to be good. But yeah, this one is pretty rough shape. So we're going to roll the dice and see what happens here. Also make sure to do a nice little clean job of around where the new seal is going to go. Having a nice clean working area when installing new parts is always ideal with anything really. Just a little bit of rust right there. Just maybe a little bit of water moisture there. So we just use this Scotch-Brite pad, and being super nice and gentle, just scrape a little bit of it off. Like I said, you don't really want to make any indents or scrape it up too much. You just want to, if you can kind of get a little bit of that off, I think it's going to help make that seal a little bit better. So just gently do that. Please do not sand. Sand you do not want to do. So what you're going to want to do now is use some chassis lube and just give it a little grease on the inside. So we got the new seal back on there. Lightly tap it all the way around. Make sure it gives a nice tight seal. So what we're going to do now is just slide that in ever so carefully, not to damage the seal. So basically right now we're just trying to get it through that hole without breaking shit. So we just had to put down the camera for a sec there because this was a two-man job for sure. What you missed, we ended up putting these bolts back in. We just played with the jacked this up a little bit enough that we could put the bolts in there. Not super tight, but make sure they're kind of nice and snug there now. And then I was able to pull the CV axle right here and just pull it through there. We kind of messed up the first time because we were just jamming it in. So be super careful that this little rubber, there's a rubber grommet, or rubber seal, sorry. And there's like a little spring that goes around it on the other side too, and that ended up getting pinched in there. So luckily the other one was in still good condition from that old one, so we just did a little swap there. But yeah, make sure when you do it not to pinch the seal or that little rubber, or that little metal spring that goes around the. Now that we had that back piece back in, we just give it another quick clean and lube because it just kicked a bunch of dirt and dust into it. You should also get a little O-ring, and that's just gonna go right like that. There's a better shot of where it goes. Pro tip, make sure to see if there's any kind of dimple. If there's any kind of dimple around here or around here, because Matt was saying that some might only go on one way, but this one looks like it doesn't really matter which way you put it on. So bolts 1, 2, 3, 4 underneath. Just throw that other bolt on there. and the final bolt to finish it up. So cool little trick to, once you got the rotor back on there, is just toss one lug nut at the bottom there, and then onto the caliper. So we're gonna properly do this bolt here, like I was talking about. What is it, 190 foot-pounds of torque?
174.
174 is what we found on the interweb. So let's just do a quick little look over here. Those two bottom ones, I think it was 118 torque spec on those. The back ones on the calipers, if you really want to get fancy, 91.
Yeah.
This one, like I said, 175-ish.
Yeah, 174.
174. So do a quick look over. That bolt's back in there. We did the 4 behind the rotor. One big main one's torqued up. Make sure you put your little clip back in there for the brake line, and do the 2 behind the caliper there. Alright, so one last part, almost forgot about it. By the way, tools you will need,
All over the floor.
that stuff right there. You'll need some, and those things, and maybe that thing over there too, and that. Yeah. Hey guys, so that wraps up today's video of the wheel bearing and CV axle install. Just make sure to also check your differential fluid if you did do the CV axle, because it will obviously be a little bit low. Hope you guys liked the video. If you did like it, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe down below, and hopefully we'll see you guys next time.